My dad didn't mean to leave the line open. I'd called from my grandmother's kitchen asking about a small piece of paperwork when the rustle of his jacket came through, followed by my mother's voice and then his, clear as day. She's a burden, always has been. I froze, hands still on the drawer I'd been searching. They laughed, talking about plans I was never meant to hear, plans that circled around the house my grandmother left me. I didn't interrupt. I didn't call back. I stayed quiet, but only long enough to decide exactly how this story would end. Growing up, I learned early that love in our house came with conditions. Our place sat on a narrow street in a working-class suburb outside the city, peeling paint-thin walls, a kitchen table that rocked, no matter how many times my dad wedged cardboard under the leg. Harold and Marilyn called it home, but it never felt like one. Every argument, every slammed cabinet, every reminder of what they'd sacrificed sank into the floorboards like smoke. You think we have money to burn? My dad would snap whenever I needed something for school. Be grateful we keep a roof over your head. I was, or I tried to be. But every Friday afternoon, I'd watch the clock until I could escape to Grandma Lorraine's house across town, a quiet street, a wide porch, and a garden that always smelled faintly of lavender and warm soil. She'd meet me at the door with a hug that didn't tighten when I breathed and ask about my week like the answer mattered. Her home felt like air after being underwater. In that house, I learned gentleness wasn't weakness. I learned silence didn't have to be sharp. She taught me to plant flowers, to budget, to build a life brick by brick instead of resenting the world for not handing one over. You're capable, Annabelle, she'd say. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. When she passed unexpectedly, the grief hollowed me out. The reading of her will shook everyone else. She left me the house, a fully paid property worth close to $900,000, and left my parents a small cash amount they burned through in weeks. After that, they started calling my place the family home as if the deed were merely a suggestion. My mother walked through rooms critiquing paint colors I'd chosen. My father dragged his old recliner into the living room and planted it like a flag. I told myself they were grieving. I told myself letting them stay a while was the right thing. A while became years. They never contributed a cent to the mortgage bills or maintenance, but they always had opinions. They talked about renovations I'd never agreed to. They dropped hints about how some families share everything. And when they planned their dream trip to Europe, they floated the idea of using the house's equity to fund it. You're doing well, my mother said lightly, her fork scraping against her plate. It's time you give back. I didn't take a loan for them, but I did pay for most of their trip out of guilt, so old it felt like instinct. They left the country smiling, wrapped in scarves they'd bought for the flight, promising souvenirs. I stayed home trying to believe that generosity wasn't the same thing as being used. The day everything shifted was so ordinary, it almost felt like a joke. I'd spent the morning showing listings across town and came home to the slow drip under the kitchen sink, a tiny leak my dad swore he'd fixed months earlier. I needed the warranty information for the faucet, one of the few things he'd actually installed himself. So I called him. Just a simple call, a practical question. Nothing that should have detonated my entire life. He answered from somewhere loud clinking glasses, street noise, laughter. We're heading to dinner, he said, sounding irritated. I'd interrupted. Check the drawer in the den. Should be under kitchen. I thanked him, told him to enjoy his night. He grumbled something I couldn't make out. Then came the rustle of fabric, footsteps, the muffled echo of my mother's voice. I waited for the click. There should have been a click, but instead I heard my mother ask, "Who was that, Annabelle?" he said, like the name itself exhausted him. Always something wrong with the house. My breath caught. They hadn't hung up. Well, my mother sighed. That's what happens when she gets handed a home she didn't earn. Your mother should have left it to us. We would have used it wisely. I gripped the edge of the counter. My grandmother had trusted me. She knew exactly what she was doing. Hearing them rewrite that truth clawed at something deep in me. My father's voice sharpened. Once we're back, we're going to sit her down about our retirement. She needs to understand that house is our future. It's ridiculous. It's only in her name. My chest tightened. I'd always suspected they resented my ownership. I had never imagined they had a plan. My mother lowered her voice, but not enough. She feels guilty so easily. Just push a little. She'll sign whatever we need. Mention Dr. Bills. That always gets her. My stomach dropped. That wasn't worry. That was strategy. And if she resists, my father continued casually remind her what we sacrificed for her. She owes us. By next year, the deed will have our names on it. My ears rang. My vision tunneled. But they weren't finished. She's always been a burden, my father said, as if finally saying out loud the truth he'd held for years. From the moment she was born, the laugh that followed his first, then hers, broke something cleanly inside me like the snap of a bone. I don't remember ending the call. I only remember sinking onto the floor back against the cabinets, the dripping faucet tapping a slow rhythm, while the weight of every memory rearranged itself. Every criticized choice, every guilt trip, every reminder of sacrifice. None of it had been love. It had been leverage. I replayed their words over and over until the humiliation turned to heat. Then the heat sharpened into clarity. If they saw me as a burden, then I didn't owe them anything. I wiped my face, stood, and grabbed my laptop. I didn't scream or confront them. I didn't send a message or call back. I did something far more dangerous in their eyes. I began to plan. For 3 days, I moved like a shadow through my own life. I called in sick, claiming a fever I didn't have because I couldn't trust my voice not to crack in front of anyone. Every time I tried to make coffee or answer an email, my mind replayed the same sentence. She's always been a burden. Said so casually, it may as well have been the weather. By the 4th morning, the numbness cracked. I opened my laptop and typed one name, Vivian Hale, a family property attorney I'd worked with through clients, sharp, calm, precise. The kind of person who didn't flinch at messy dynamics. Vivian didn't react when I told her the house was deeded solely to me. She didn't react when I explained my parents had lived there rent-free for years. But when I repeated the words I'd heard over the open line, her jaw tightened just slightly. "You are under no legal obligation to house your parents," she said. "The property is yours. Their residency gives them no ownership. And if I wanted to end that arrangement, you can. Just document everything, and don't warn them until you're ready." Those words, simple, factual, felt like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't realize I'd been suffocating in. That afternoon, I called Ethan Shaw, one of the few colleagues who'd always treated me like an equal. "I need a discreet sale," I said. "No listing, no signs, fast." He didn't ask why. "I know 2 off-market buyers looking for something in your area. We can hit around 980 if the timing works." Exactly the number I needed. Once the dominoes were set, I moved fast. I walked through every room with a notebook, creating 3 categories, mine, theirs, uncertain. I didn't want a single accusation later. Boxes formed neat rows across the hardwood floors, my belongings taped and labeled for a mover, theirs stacked separately with a plan already forming in my mind. I rented a storage unit under their names and paid 6 months up front. I arranged a moving team to handle the transfer the same day my own belongings would be delivered to a furnished short-term apartment 2 hours away. Then came the rest of the logistics: new bank accounts, updated passwords, a new phone number, a new email. Each task felt like cutting a thread that had tied me to my parents my entire life. On the final night before the movers arrived, I walked slowly through the house. The empty walls echoed in a way that made the entire place feel unfamiliar. In the garden, the flowers Grandma Lorraine taught me to plant were just beginning to open. I crouched down, touching one of the petals. "I'm not the burden you thought," I whispered, unsure whether I was speaking to them or promising something to myself. The next morning, when the truck pulled away with my boxes, I didn't look back. I had vanished quietly, legally, completely. My parents landed on a warm Thursday afternoon in early fall, the kind of day where the sun hangs low and the air smells faintly of dry leaves. I knew their flight schedule because they'd emailed it to me weeks earlier, expecting a ride home. I imagined them stepping off the plane, refreshed from wine tastings and boat tours, pulling luggage covered in stickers from cities I'd never seen. They had no idea the world they were returning to. At exactly 4:12 p.m., my old neighbor, Mrs. Dawson, texted me a single line: "They're here." I sat in my car outside my new apartment 2 hours away, hands wrapped around the steering wheel until my knuckles paled. I didn't need to be at the house. I knew exactly what was happening step by step. They would pull into the driveway, still laughing about their trip. They would notice my car wasn't there and assume I was running errands. They would carry their luggage to the front door, juggling shopping bags filled with souvenirs I'd indirectly paid for. Then Harold would take out his key. He would slide it into the lock. He would turn it, and he would hear nothing but a dull, empty click. The image steadied me. I closed my eyes and breathed in the quiet of my new life. Later, Mrs. Dawson called. I answered on the first ring. "Annabelle, they're losing it," she whispered, trying not to laugh. "Your dad tried the key 4 times. Your mom's banging on the door like someone's inside." I could picture it so clearly, their disbelief turning to confusion, their confusion curdling into anger. "What are they doing now?" I asked, my voice too calm even for me. "They're walking around the house, checking windows." "Oh, your dad is saying you must have changed the locks without permission." "Annabelle, sweetheart, this is something else." It was. And it was only the beginning. An hour later, I got my first voicemail. "Annabelle, what the hell is going on? The key doesn't work. Call me back immediately." The next one from my mother arrived 5 minutes later. "Honey, this must be a misunderstanding. We're worried." "Where are you? Why is the house empty? Please call us." Not a single crack of self-reflection, not even an ounce of accountability. Just shock that the world wasn't bending to them the way it always had. Then came the voicemail I had been waiting for. "We found your little note. A burden did this." "Really? Is that supposed to be funny? You can't just sell our home out from under us. Expect a lawyer." Every sentence was dripping with entitlement, each word confirming I had done the right thing. They didn't call again that night, but I knew they would escalate. I didn't have to wait long. At 10 the next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from my office. "Your parents are here. They're yelling. The boss asked them to leave. Do you need help?" Heat rose up my neck. Even after everything, they still believed embarrassment would scare me into compliance. I called the office to apologize, and my boss said gently, "Take all the time you need, Annabelle. They won't be allowed back in." It was the first time someone outside my grandmother had fully taken my side. That evening, my new number shared with almost no one rang. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity tugged at me. Tomorrow, my father's voice said clipped and simmering with restrained anger. 10 o'clock. Maple Street Cafe. "If you don't show, we're going to your workplace again and we won't be polite." He hung up before I could respond. My pulse thudded in my ears, but fear didn't come. Something colder did a clarity I hadn't felt since hearing that open call. This time, I wouldn't show up as their daughter. I would show up as the woman who had finally learned how to protect herself. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes late on purpose. The place was busy, espresso machines hissing silverware, clinking low conversations weaving together. A public space, a safe space. Harold and Marilyn sat in a corner booth. My mother looked smaller than I remembered. My father looked angrier. Both stiffened when they saw me. "You finally decided to show," my father snapped. I set my phone on the table, deliberately letting the gesture speak for itself. "I'm here," I said, "but I won't be shouted at. Say what you came to say." "What did you do to our home?" my mother burst out, her voice trembling. "Why would you sell it without telling us? We lived there." "It was never your home," I said quietly. "You lived there because I allowed it, and you repaid that by planning to take it." My father leaned forward. We were discussing our future. "You completely misunderstood." Before he could finish, I tapped my phone screen. Their voices poured out. The recording filled the corner booth. "She's a burden. Once she signs the house over, we're set. Use guilt. She falls for that. She owes us." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's face drained of color, then flushed a deep red. "How dare you record us? You called me." I cut in. "You forgot to hang up." I heard every word. And it showed me exactly where I stand in this family. My mother started crying, her shoulders shaking just enough to look convincing to the untrained eye. Once that would have worked. Once I would have folded instantly. Not now. I paid the bills, I maintained the home, I supported a vacation I couldn't even afford for myself. And you still saw me as a burden to manage. So here's what's going to happen. Their crying quieted. Their breathing stilled. I'm done. No more money. No more support. No more guilt. If you contact my workplace again, I will take legal action. If you show up at my home, you will meet security. If you continue harassing me, you'll meet my attorney. You can't just cut us out of your life, my father hissed. I'm not cutting you out, I said, standing. You pushed me out a long time ago. I'm just finally walking away. My mother whispered, Where will we go? What are we supposed to do? That I said with a steady calm. I didn't know I possessed is something you'll have to figure out on your own. For the first time. I picked up my phone, slid it into my bag, and stepped out of the booth. Neither of them reached for me. Neither called my name. When I walked out into the crisp fall air, I didn't look back. In the weeks after the cafe confrontation, the silence was almost disorienting. No voicemails, no emails, no uninvited appearances at my office. Just quiet, heavy at first, then oddly peaceful. I moved through my new townhouse in Richmond like someone learning how to breathe correctly for the first time. The place was smaller, simpler, but every corner belonged to me. No lingering tension. No old recliner facing the TV like a throne. No footsteps that made my stomach tighten. I returned to work with a focus I hadn't felt in years. My clients noticed. My boss noticed. Even I noticed. Without constant emotional drain, I had energy left over for my job, for my friends, for myself. Therapy helped too. Dr. Caroline Brooks walked me through the years of blurred boundaries and taught me words I'd never let myself say out loud: financial abuse, emotional manipulation, coercive guilt. Naming things didn't erase them, but it stripped them of their power. One afternoon, while sorting through a box of old files, I found a small envelope written in Grandma Lorraine's handwriting. I'd read the letter inside once before, but this time the words hit differently. Never doubt your worth, she wrote. Never let anyone take from you what you've earned. For the first time, I believed her. When the local community center asked if I'd host a workshop for first-time home buyers on protecting themselves financially, I said yes, without hesitation. Teaching others what I'd learned the hard way felt like stitching something torn back together. I wasn't the burden. I was the one who finally put the weight down. A year after everything unraveled, I stood in my new garden, smaller than my grandmother's, but blooming the same way she taught me. The wind was soft, the sky wide, and for the first time, my life felt like it finally fit. I didn't know if my parents would ever change, and I wasn't waiting for them to. Peace didn't come from fixing them. It came from choosing myself. If you've ever had to walk away to protect your own well-being, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.